Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Cinema Savvy News. It is myself, George, alone, and that's how it kind of is. I think these days we might get some other people on, we never know. The breaking news last week, I'll talk about it very briefly. However, this is the news show. Now, I'm going to kick this off saying I didn't do it last week. There wasn't much news, then everything came on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning. I've kind of made a choice that I'm going to change it to being a fortnightly show because we only want to really cover not just the big news stories, but in the past we did every single news point of every week. Sometimes it get a little ridiculous and we don't have that kind of time compared to back then. Albeit there is a little bit more time. We're just sort of refining what I'm going to classify as not news. It's all news, but I'm not going to sit here and do speculation news, that kind of stuff, which you get a lot of. So I'm going to kick things off with the headline. If you can't tell by the thumbnail, it involves Jurassic Park. Specifically, the original Jurassic Park. They have announced, I think I first saw it via Laura Dern's Instagram, and then it was everywhere via a press release. The original Jurassic Park trio is going to be reuniting in Jurassic World 3, which is, of course, Jeff Goldblum, Laura Dern, and Sam Neill, all reprising their characters. Now, over the original trilogy, and I guess in theory Goldblum in Jurassic World 2, they have all reprised their characters in some degree, but we've never seen the trio together. Now, I'm not going to draw an immediate comparison to Star Wars 9. It's not Star Wars 7, where, we never got that scene with Luke, Leia, and Han, which obviously was one thing everyone wanted. But I respect where the story went, and as much as I'd like to have seen the scene, I do enjoy what it did. Jurassic Park to me is a different ballgame. These three, like I said, they only had one film together as a trio, and they all worked well off one another. They all had different chemistry, one with the other. It worked perfectly as a trio, and I'm kind of excited for this. I mean, Jurassic World 2, I don't think it was the worst film in the world. I don't think it was the best film in the world. It was utterly pointless as they are. But there were some kind of cool things in there. However, the trailer did sort of spoil everything. Jeff Goldblum's return was before Ragnarok. That's the only way I can put it. Before he was back in the limelight, before, sort of the jazz music and all that kind of stuff. Now when they bring Jeff back, he's not going to be sitting there at a microphone in a sort of, like a hearing like he was in Jurassic World 2. This is going to be Goldblum back in the game as being Jeff Goldblum. I guarantee you he's probably not been more popular than he is now for a good couple of decades. That's me being brutally honest. Sam Neill's always like to see. We don't really get enough of him. Obviously, Peaky Blinders fans will know him. He was in the first couple of seasons as Major Campbell. I think he was in the Taika Waititi film, which I've not seen yet. I think I'm not where the wild things are. Hunt for the Wilder People, I think it may have been. And obviously Laura Dern, Last Scene and Last Jedi, are doing very well. I think Pretty Little Liars or something like that on HBO. So the three of them, they've all kind of done their own thing. But if this is going to end the whole franchise, which I somehow doubt it will, because if in 20 years' time the Jurassic World trilogy is done, there'll be Jurassic Global or some other Jurassic trilogy to do. But seeing the three, that's going to be great. However, one question this leaves me with is, I really didn't care too much about Chris Pratt's character, Bryce Dallas Howard as well. They're okay. There's nothing special. No one's going to want to see them over the original trio. Of course, they're both going to be in it, and they'll be integral to it. However, I feel that there's going to be, they know that the other people want to see the originals come back. So I'm interested to see where the story takes it. And if anyone has seen that short film that came out a couple of weeks ago, do check that out. It's like a little 8-minute short film Colin Trevorrow directed. It's quite neat. It's nice seeing these kind of not franchise short films, but I remember the Marvels used to get a one shot on every Blu-ray. I think they're bringing that back with Spider-Man Far From Home. But, it's nice when these sort of bigger franchises can do something not little like that, because it's probably more expensive, that CGI in that 8-minute video, than most short films of the last 2 years. But I like seeing little things like that. And not only does it not begin hype, I don't think it begins hype, but it's a nice little bridging gap of where the world is at this point. So do check that if you haven't already. But that's the main news piece, the Jurassic World cast returning. Personally, I'm very excited. I can't wait to see them all back on the screens. I'm just more worried about the story more so than anything, because it's where episode 7 differed was you hadn't seen the original trio since 1983. This is a case of they've all been in films since this point. So I'm interested to see how it is. And the other thing is, I hope it's not a sign they're running out of ideas for Jurassic World 3. I really hope it's not a sign. I want it to be good. I know the production, I think, is set to start filming next year in London. So I'm going to guess 2021, maybe, a release date. I'm sure it's probably already out there somewhere. But that's the Jurassic World 3 / Jurassic Park news. The next piece of news is a real big one that came out of nowhere again. This was the day after the Jurassic Park news. Kevin Feige, the sort of god of Marvel, created the MCU, his baby, his everything. In theory, the most successful producer in history in regards to box office now. He is going to be producing a Star Wars film. It's a well-known fact he's a very big Star Wars fan. He's gone on record and said this many times. He said that he wishes that he could do not Star Wars film, but he always said that I'd love to be able to do a Star Wars celebration, but just for the MCU. He's never hidden the fact that he's a fan from this. And when you've got one of the most successful producers in history, not just him, but Kathleen Kennedy with him, to come out in this report that she approached him, seeing if he would be interested in producing a Star Wars film. Now, to me, that is just a collaboration made in heaven. Seeing the two of them together, I think a lot of people think, I'm not trying to discredit either of them, a lot of people think Kathleen Kennedy is nothing, they're stupid. Lots of people think that Kevin Feige can't afford to produce another film of them, Marvel. The guy is producing 3 films a year, planning films years in advance. I'm pretty sure if he wanted to produce the keyword produce a Star Wars film, he is not any more than capable of doing it. He could easily do it. And I also think, before any speculation begins, this is not some Star Wars cinematic universe starting. I just think this is a successful producer that just wants to collaborate and work on another franchise. When people think Kevin Feige, he did more than the MCU. Granted, a lot of old Marvel films, like pre-MCU. He does have a successful track record. I think it's one way of putting it. And I'm interested to see what he does with the Star Wars property. It's an almighty property to be producing on. Obviously, the one thing about Star Wars is that people get aggravated sort of 5-6 years in advance. Look at the Rian Johnson trilogy. I couldn't be happy that's coming out. You've had people 2 years post Last Jedi still giving him like death threats on a weekly basis. Every interview that he comes across is asked, are you still making Star Wars? Yes, he is. And obviously now Kevin Feige is going to get this for the however many years to come. Are you producing a Star Wars film? Well, I think he is. I'm interested to see what it is. I'm not bothered about the era. The main talking point for me is that this isn't going to be the Rian Johnson trilogy. This isn't going to be the Dan and Dave trilogy. If this is a film, this is in theory maybe the first one that's new upcoming announced film that might not be a trilogy, that might be potentially another standalone, another Star Wars story. Could it be a Disney Plus exclusive? I don't know. But again, long-term planning from Lucasfilm, there is more Star Wars films coming. And I'm going to just quickly switch my news around because one thing that came with this is Bob Iger's got a new book coming out, and he did a couple of interviews about how Disney bought Star Wars, some of the stuff that came from it, some of the drama, some of the not. I've kind of got 2 pieces here. So he admitted that he put a little bit too much in the marketplace too fast. They're his words. Obviously, for anyone who knows that Solo didn't perform at the box office, anyone with common sense could tell you that releasing it 5 months after Episode 8, 1 month after Infinity War, the same, I think, week or the same month as Deadpool 2, maybe. Personally, it wasn't the smartest decision. I enjoyed Solo, but even dating back to May 2018, I had kind of next to no hype. I didn't even do a midnight screening. I just went in the morning. I only saw it once at the cinema. Not that I regret that, but I've seen it a couple more times since, and I do really enjoy it. However, I love Last Jedi, but 5 months between Star Wars films to me was too much. If it had the December slot last year, they could have marketed it properly. There was nothing else out. It would have absolutely annihilated Aquaman at the box office, no questions asked. And you've got to December last year, and there was this gaping hole, which was no Star Wars film, the first one in obviously only 3 years. But, with 9 coming out this December, one of the only positives of the downside of Solo was that there's now 19 months between Solo and Episode 9, which I definitely think is helping Episode 9's marketing. We haven't done this, obviously it's following on from Episode 8 anyway, but there's been a nice big gap, and obviously we're getting Mandalorian coming next month as well. So when Bob Iger, he said in the past he's took the blame for Solo. To me, this comes across as him doing it as well. He then goes on to say that he talks about the Fox takeover. He says that the talent we have at the company is better than it's ever been. In part, this is because the influx of people from Fox basically means I'm just using their best staff. I don't see an issue with that. That's not his job, but you're not going to absorb that company and use their best people. Then he went on to say Rupert Murdoch was, quote, crazed when Disney bought Lucasfilm. Murdoch was apparently severely disappointed. His team didn't think to buy Lucasfilm because they distributed all of them. They just assumed that it wouldn't happen. I thought this is quite ironic. I'm not going to go into modern day politics, but Rupert Murdoch, people know what he is. People can Google it if you want. At the end of the day, he still got bought out by Disney eventually. I wouldn't have wanted to, as much as I mentioned the Fox fanfare, Star Wars is in much safer hands than it would have been in Fox, and obviously away from Murdoch. And then thirdly, for Bob Iger news, spoke about George Lucas, and this has been misquoted everywhere, so this is a pretty annoying one to get into again. He's saying that George Lucas was basically disappointed with Force Awakens. They didn't use sort of modern technology and as much new stuff, which is obviously completely understandable. And he, quote, felt betrayed that they didn't follow his, not storyboards, his treatments for the new trilogy. Now, anyone doesn't know, when Lucas sold the company to Disney, Disney approached him to buy it. He was shell-shocked to come out of nowhere. Over the coming months, he then got it valued, got the original trio back in, says we're gonna do a new trilogy. He didn't tell them it'd be at Disney. He just got them to sign it. He wrote treatments, so he wrapped everything in a nice little bow for Disney to take care of. And obviously Disney looked at that, thought great, and obviously they took his treatment and they followed some of it they didn't. Now there are multiple conflicting stories. If you can go out there, you can Google some of the stuff George Lucas apparently wanted to do with his new trilogy. I think the first one, episode 7, there's some aside to 8 that he had Luke training a new young Jedi. That was in there. Obviously, that was adapted in episode 8, but it was going to be going into midichlorians and the Force as a thing. And obviously, you bring in midichlorians, people are going to get aggravated on the spot. So I think, obviously, nice out yet. We don't know George Lucas's treatment. I'd be very intrigued one day to see them adapted into like a comic or a book. I know that Pablo Hidalgo tweeted once that if they ever did anything like that, it'd have to be way past episode 9's release, which is fine. I am just, again, this all comes out of Bob Iger promoting a book. This is stuff we knew about 4 years ago. Lucas said from the get-go he didn't like episode 7. And at the end of the day, no one can say he's full out of Disney because he still did Celebration 2017. He turned up to the open at Galaxy's Edge. He's allowed them to screen a original theatrical copy of episode 4 only a couple of months ago. So I think it's a non-story that's been kind of twisted and shared. And in theory, me talking about this, I guess, does that, but I don't mean it to be like that. So that is almost all the Star Wars news. There's one little bit more, which I know this is TV. This kind of takes away from Cinema Summit. However, the Obi-Wan Kenobi series has found a director. Deborah Chow is going to be directing the series. They haven't said how many episodes it's going to be yet. I'm going to guess 6 or 8. 8's what Mandalorian has. Sounds about right. There's not necessarily too much Obi-Wan to tell, but you want to get a perfect story. I think a 6-hour miniseries would be great. Kind of what you see on like HBO, stuff like that. And for those that aren't aware of Deborah Chow, I went live, not sending any of her stuff. However, she will be directing, I believe, 2 episodes of The Mandalorian. She directed episodes on Better Call Saul, Mr. Robot, and the not Gods Amongst Men. There's a new TV series on Amazon, Gods or something like that. She's directed on that too. So she's got a background in telly. She's worked with Lucasfilm, and they've kind of nabbed her, said the whole series is yours. So fair play to them. There were rumors that it was going to be Obi-Wan, Ewan McGregor directing 1 or 2 of them, but obviously that's not come to pass. However, he will be an executive producer on the show as well. So that's all the Star Wars news. Now I've got to jump back into some more Marvel stuff. Obviously, I did a breaking news the other day about the Spider-Man rights not returning to Disney, but they've basically made a deal. He's going to stay in the MCU. No dramas anymore. Just to go with this, I'm not going to repeat the whole video. Check me and Chris's breaking news video for that. However, they've now announced that John Watts will be returning to direct. I don't want to say Spider-Man 3 because there is only one Spider-Man 3. I want to say the Disney Spider-Man 3. I don't know what this is. This isn't the Spider-Man 3. This is a Spider-Man 3. However, the director John Watts is returning to that. To go in with this, there is ironically now a rumor that Sony are now developing a Madame Web film. If anyone's heard of Madame Web, you probably recognize her from the original 90s animated TV series. I'm not gonna lie, I can't remember too much about her, but it was a very boring, convoluted story. Obviously, there's probably a rich comic history there somewhere, but this is, again, Sony's announcing 10 more Spider-Man films at a time. They've signed their Tom Holland deal. I reckon they've put clauses in there for him to appear in both MCU and these Venom, whatever this Spider-Verse about Spider-Man thing is. So I wouldn't be surprised if they use this as a bridge to take him out of the MCU, keep them at Sony and not affect the MCU continuity. So I won't be surprised if that happens. And speaking of Sony, the very popular Uncharted game, it's been in development hell for years and years, the film. It was originally release date, I believe, was like next Christmas. Definitely not happening now. They've just announced this week that Travis Knight is going to be directing. If anyone's aware of Travis Knight, he directed Bumblebee and he directed Kubo and the Two Strings. Both films very fond of on this channel. Worth checking them if you haven't already. It's a very interesting choice. However, to me, the Uncharted film is dead by having Tom Holland in it. That is not a criticism of Tom Holland as an actor. It's a criticism of taking a video game character, late 30s, Indiana Jones basically, and putting it on a 22-year-old kid. We don't need an Uncharted origin film. People want to see the game being adapted. It's not hard. Bringing Tom Holland in, just, to me, that's a film dead from the get-go. It'd be like having The Last of Us and having like, oh, look, here's a young Joel. He has not got any daughters yet, but, one day there'll be a zombie invasion. That's not Last of Us. Don't do that, Sony. You don't need Tom Holland in Uncharted. So they're the kind of bigger stories. We've got a couple of little ones to go through. There's rumors there's a Princess Bride reboot in the works. The producers had to come out and said that this is not the case at all. He was just doing an interview, was misquoted when he said that multiple people have come to him about the potentially rebooting it. He said that he wouldn't want to reboot it. He doesn't think that it would need to be rebooted. We have one comment from Seaward Man I'm going to put on the screen. Bumblebee was great, but not amazing. That's fair. I think if you compare it to the other 5 Transformers films, it's great. Still not my favorite Transformers film. My favorite Transformers 3. I've got mad respect for that. Fight me on it if you need to. But Travis Knight doing Uncharted, jumping back to that, it's a good choice. I think he'll be fine with it. But again, it's more, you need to get the casting right, and Tom Holland is not Nathan Drake. M. Night, apologies on the presentation, I still can't do it. Shyamalan has got 2 new films in development. So if anyone's seen Glass came out at the start of the year, we've got a review for that on our channel. Really enjoyed it. He's on a little bit of form again now with Split followed by Glass. He's got 2 films in development, one for 2021, one for 2023. Whether this is a 2-parter, we don't know. Whether it's a very long sequel that comes out of nowhere like Split was, we also don't know. However, this is going to be interesting to see what he does. He's a director where, albeit there's been some not great films on his portfolio, he usually strives for original content, which I completely respect. And he kind of seems the type that he gets locked up. People will greenlight his films because he's just going to do something a bit different. And whether it works or not is one thing, but the respect that you can get from that is another. So fair play to him for that. I'll be excited to see those. And that is all of the news for this week. As I said, it was mainly focused on the Jurassic World and the Star Wars things. Obviously, check out the Spider-Man breaking news video from Friday if you do want to hear more about our thoughts and opinions on it. So I'm going to leave this one here for the news for this week. If there anything breaking just pop up and not at 6 a.m. in the morning like the Jurassic Park news did, then we'll probably be doing like a live stream to discuss it. What I'm going to do in the meantime is do the usual stuff, pop up our Facebook and Twitter and Instagram stuff. So we've got facebook.com/cinemasavvy, at cinema_savvy on both Twitter and on Instagram. So check those out if you want to follow us on social media. Me and Tate are going to be at London Film Festival, which starts this Wednesday the 2nd. We're going to be going we don't have a confirmed schedule or not, but I will be there for a couple of days over the 11 it's going to be on. I think sort of 6 days in total. So we're going to be trying to catch some big films that are going to be coming out sort of early next year. We might be able to get reviews of them. We might not. So stick with the channel. Check us out on social media. We'll have coverage from that. I'm as like I said, I got invited to the Irishman press conference where De Niro and Scorsese is on, so I'm very excited for that one. And then we've got a couple of reviews coming out over the next couple of weeks. And our last review was Rambo Last Blood, which me and Chris did yesterday. So if you want to have a look at that, check that out on our channel. We also had some of the September reviews, such as It Chapter 2 and Ad Astra. So thank you for everybody for commenting, for watching, for following us. If you want to see more, check us out on social media, subscribe to us. If you want notifications when we go live, then there's like a bell button you can press that will do that. So in the meantime, I'm going to leave you. Thank you all for listening.